to all other projects of government, it would require periodic extensions or assessments, not extensions, but periodic assessments. It would require a budget to run. It would require a period which would be at which it will end. There's no project that I'm aware of in government that runs indefinitely. They are all time-bound. Now, the initial mandate of the NPKTT was actually for 6 months, not 6 years, 6 months, from July 2018 to the end of the year. It was then extended from January to July 2019. And thereafter, they decided that if any extension, it would be annual. But initially, it was 6 months. That's why at the end of the first 6 months, there was an assessment. And it was decided consciously that there would need to be an extension, which was for another 6 months. Now, in 2020, there was COVID in the country, and there was no assessment that was made of the PKTT in that year. The following year, 2021, an assessment was conducted. And as required, and an extension signed off by the National Commissioner, and the National Political Killing Task Team was ultimately appointed or apportioned its funding for the relevant year because of its extension. Now, beyond 2022, because this was an extension between 2021 and 2022, there was no further extension that was sought. In the same manner, I should qualify that, as it had happened before. And there's marked differences when you look at the previous extensions and after 2022. As a result, the NPKTT continued to operate without a required assessment and renewal for more than 2 years. And I'm advised that the relevant expenditure during this period, beyond 2022, on the NPKTT is irregular under the PFMA, Act 1 of 1999. National Political Killings Task Team was a project. It had a project leader. It was not a unit in SAPS, and it had no budget allocated, but budget had to be found from other programs, even during extensions, to fund it. And it had a clear objective, and it had to be subjected to regular assessments, and costs had to be calculated at each time there would be an extension, just like all other projects of government. And it was time-bound all the time, from the time it was conceptualized. It was never an open-ended. It was 6 months, and next 6 months, and next a year, and then next a year, but after 2022, there were no longer, I would say, proper assessments in the true sense of the word.
Thank you, Minister. You then have a subtopic, but before we get to that subtopic, at paragraph 31, you mentioned that you are advised. Are you speaking about advice that you had received at the time when you were considering the PKTT or having regard to the PKTT, or now that it was in violation?
I'm talking about now.
Now,
Yes.
Okay. You may proceed to the subtopic, which is the shift towards permanent structures. And you do set out here facts that, of course, you don't have personal knowledge of, but you do reference a work study, which you say you would have had knowledge of, because would that have been part of your orientation? Yes, if you could just deal with that briefly, please.
In September 2018, SAPS initiated feasibility studies for a new specialized investigative capacities, including murder and robbery, anti-gang taxi violence, and cold cases or cold case investigations. These findings were later consolidated in the 2019 work study. In 2018-2019, feasibility studies confirmed that political murders were already within the core mandate of murder and robbery capacities and didn't require a parallel temporal task team structure. The study set out a detailed minimum personnel and functional requirements that couldn't be met sustainably through temporal project team, in other words, on a project team basis, or on a project basis, rather. Now, on 26 June 2019, General Sithole approved the work study establishing the murder and robbery unit and other specialized unit as per the outcome of the work study commissioned, as I indicated above. The murder and robbery unit's mandate, including serial murders, police killings, political murders, murders of elderly persons, and attacks on farms and small holding. And I attach a copy for your reference as SM3. It outlines very, very well. And perhaps I should just explain it as you would see there. The component is called serious and violent crimes. Under it, there is a section called murder and robbery. And under murder and robbery, in terms of the list of mandates that murder and robbery would do under serious and serious and violent crimes, that is where you will find that list of mandates. And that list includes political murders, even at that stage. I had, you will see on page 12, all identified serial murders that I've been speaking to on the other page, murder and attempted murder, even murders committed against officials, the execution of their duties. He then talks about police killings, as I've indicated, but next to that, political murders and attempted murders. And it goes down. These are mandates that were identified by the work study, which was translated into a structure, an organizational structure. Now, I won't go down there because it's clearer.
Minister, is there any significance that police killings, political murders, and
Sorry, Chair. Just give the minister a moment. Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
It falls. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let me start again, Minister. You'll see that you have the various bullet points there.
Yes.
And each one of those, except the one that I'm going to talk about just now, appear to have one idea, as it were. But when it comes to police killings, you have bullet police killings, and on the same line, or in the same line, you have what looks like a bullet. So in a sense, it's a bullet within a bullet. Then you have political murders and attempted murders. Is there any significance in that, or is it a typo?
It is a typo because when you look at the structure itself, it has a box of its own.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Minister. You may proceed. Do you want to get
I've
to...
just, our Minister, my co-commissioner, Commissioner Kumalo, has taken me to the original, the annexure itself, and there indeed there are separate bullets. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Minister, do you then want to deal with the work study and what, at paragraph 37, and what it effectively did?
This work study understood or conceptualized and understood in the manner that I've outlined by those who were dealing with it, effectively disestablished the NPKTT. Now, and established a single murder and robbery unit that would carry out the various functions of the different task teams under one umbrella. I must pause here and indicate that at one point, I don't know whether it was a month after I got appointed, I had the privilege of meeting former National Commissioner for another purpose. And I may as well indicate that the purpose was to deal with a problem that he had, or a problem that he had regarding his pension. And that meeting took place in September, or around that time. We were to discuss his complaint that he was not getting his pension. And we then had an informal chat. But I had asked him a question in the process. What is this thing called cold investigations? And then he explained, and in the process, he then took me through the work study and various matters, not in the form of a presentation, but as we were chatting. Now, I'm noting that because he didn't seem to be interested in serious and violent crimes more than in murder and robbery. That is where his emphasis were. Now, on 14 November 2019, as we continue, Major General Mzima signed an implementation letter, now implementing the work study that had been commissioned, that had now been translated into a structure, and now it was for implementation. And I want to go back to emphasize what I've just said, that according to those who were involved, once you implemented the structure, You now have murder and robbery under which you had those mandates, which meant you had sub-units under murder and robbery, sub-units. So these mandates would be carried out by sub-units. It meant that you wouldn't have PKTT or NPKTT as established in 2018. It would be absorbed into murder and robbery. So what she was signing, was then a letter giving the department a go-ahead. And the functions, therefore, contemplated in the work study were to be implemented in phases as per their decision. Now, the only specialized unit that became immediately anti-gang unit in the Western Cape and in the Eastern Cape. So they signed, and then they are already, because by this time, 14 November at signing, some units had already been established, as it were, but they were phasing them in terms of the process. Now I want to pause here and then fast forward. I'm saying fast forward so that I don't confuse you now that I'm jumping to 6 March 2024, which is last year, but still before our arrival. Colonel A.K. Marai conducted a further work study assessment to determine implementation process that, in other words, that had been called for or ushered in by another implementation letter of 14 November 2019. It's now 2024. So Colonel Marai is now conducting another assessment to determine how far has implementation gone as per letter of implementation letter of 2019. Now, the Marai report, if I could call it that, identified multiple task teams operating without monitoring, without coordination, without budgetary accountability, including political murder team. Now, we supply the copy of the Marai report marked SM5. In paragraph 6, in paragraph 4, in paragraph 5 and paragraph 1 of the Marai report, the following observations are made regarding the NPKTT and other task teams. And I quote the relevant aspects. The task teams that are not monitored, that they had discovered in the assessment, run rampant for years without determining or accounting for the gap left where the members were taken from, mostly at station level. Task teams found operating in provinces. So he does an assessment, and he discovered that there are several teams that are still operating in provinces despite the implementation letter of November 2019. And then he names these task teams that are still operating unmonitored, that are still running rampant, where there is less accountability.